Historically, India has been a miser towards research and development. We've been like what 0.6, 0.7% of GDP versus say US, China, Israel, who are like anywhere between 2.5 and 5.5% of their GDP.
That in most developed societies, 60 to 70% of that 2.5% comes from private capital.
Right.
And the rest comes from the government. In India, even though if it's 1.2, 70% is government capital. So to become Atmanirbhar, we will have to create capacity of innovation inside the country. I don't think there is any choice left.
Do you think what's happening today is at least 2, 3 decades too late? I mean, will we always play catch up?
I think we have an incredible opportunity. We are one of 3 companies which are trying to reverse the vision loss that has already happened. My wish is a therapy for less than $15,000. Every 2 to 3 years, we would debut a therapy for another incurable disease.
Joining me today is someone who's been working right there in the trenches. Dr. Jogin Desai, CEO and founder of Eyestem. Hello and welcome to What India Needs podcast with me, Shutapa Paul. Historically, India has been a miser towards research and development, but a lot is set to change. For starters, a 1 lakh crore rupee research, development and innovation fund, Desi dreams with global ambitions, and a group of dynamic founders who are setting the path. But will we always play catch up or can we take the lead? Can we provide a level playing field for homegrown innovation to reach the world? Joining me today is someone who's been working right there in the trenches. Dr. Jogin Desai, CEO and founder of Eyestem, one of 3 global companies that is working on a treatment that will reverse blindness caused by dry age macular degeneration. And this is happening right here out of India. Dr. Desai, thank you for joining us on What India Needs podcast.
Well, we're happy to join.
So, what we're discussing today is something which obviously has legacy issues, and now we are trying to fix it.
Sure.
But the hard truth is that India has simply not spent enough on R&D.
Absolutely.
We've been like what 0.6, 0.7% of GDP versus say US, China, Israel, who are like anywhere between 2.5 and 5.5% of their GDP.
Yes.
Why do you think this has happened? Because I think a lot of us, a lot of you would have been saying that we need to spend more, spend more.
Yeah. So some of it is related to the fact. So you're right. It's if you go back to the numbers, no society in the world has advanced to become a developed society unless they spent in R&D. That's just been a fact of life for the human race.
Right.
So if we want to become developed, we will have to do it. The numbers are about 2.5%, as you said. Most of them, we are around 1.2, if I remember correctly. But it still hides an even bigger problem, which is that in most developed societies, 60 to 70% of that 2.5% comes from private capital.
Right.
And the rest comes from the government. In India, even though if it's 1.2, 70% is government capital. Right. And the rest is private. So private capital is significantly less, even in a smaller number.
Right.
And that's something that we certainly need to change. We have to change. Why we are where we are? It's one of this is maybe just the Maslow's hierarchy. We had too many other very basic needs of hunger and poverty and all of that. That we were too busy trying to figure out the agri revolution and all of that. We were busy on tackling just in time problems because we couldn't afford thinking about the medium to long term. Now I would argue you cannot afford not to think, because we've reached a stage where you saw in the COVID crisis, right? The fact that we had some manufacturing facilities helped us, but if there was a crisis where there was no manufacturing available, we would have been absolutely at the mercy of players outside the country.
Right.
So to become Atmanirbhar, we will have to create capacity of innovation inside the country. I don't think there is any choice left.
But I completely understand that, especially right after our independence, we had more immediate issues to deal with. But even then, do you think what's happening today is at least 2, 3 decades too late? I mean, will we always play catch up, or do we start leading?
No, I don't think so. I think I think we have a incredible opportunity for a few things. One is, as a country, we are starting to grow in confidence. slowly, right? You see in our youth, you see in a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when you're sitting in Bangalore, you see that. Maybe it's one side, but even if you go in the B and C cities, you see the entrepreneurships. I mean, people starting to think. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think the the recent initiatives that have started, they're fairly recent. We don't know how they'll play out. But the RDI fund, for example, the researcher, it's a very ambitious initiative. We've met with some of the topmost government officials, and they're extremely committed to getting this done. And that is, we're seeing it with the speed and agility which even we have not seen in corporates. Right? So that's something that's heartening. And the reason why I say is that we have a moment in time is because India is investing at the exact same moment that the West is receding. If you look at the cuts that are happening in the US, the NIH and all of that, they are devastating to them. Even the PhD programs, it's going to be felt for years to come. But it is this time that we need to start investing in our deep tech.
Right.
So that's hopeful. I still think there is a severe lack of risk capital in this country, which I mean, this is why the government had to step in. Yeah. Because there's no middle private layer of risk capital that's available. There are a few, including some of them who have backed us, but all in all, we could count on a few fingers the amount of people who would
What
work
would
on
it
this.
take to change this mindset?
Money. What it would take is a large example of a return on capital that dwarfs anything else that you can make elsewhere. It's just how it is, right? We have to accept that because they are also VCs. They have their own partners to report to and so on. So historically, outside India, in the US especially, life science funds have always fared better than IT funds. Always. And that's been the reality for most of developed world, because when you get life science returns, they are completely outsized. It's a binary thing. Yeah. So you need to invest in a lot of companies to get to that outsized fund. But the people like Premji, who invested in Moderna, invested for 10 years, and then all of a sudden Moderna became this multi-billion-dollar company. So I think we're seeing that slowly happening. Not the return, but at least we can see that someplace somebody is going to break out, right? And that is going to create the herd. I mean, it's always a herd mentality. Herd mentality, FOMO, all the things that drive venture investing will hopefully flip over.
And hopefully, when you see the government is becoming more agile and more proactive, maybe it can, because this government is interacting a lot more with the investing community, for example. So if there is some kind of ripple effect that we could possibly expect.
Yes, and the government is not just interacting with the VCs, but also with the startups directly. Right. And that has helped us because, I mean, we were in this was a public setting where the DST secretary essentially said the reason why the government has stepped in is because there is no risk capital, private risk capital here. Otherwise, it's not the job of the government to create risk capital pools of such large nature in a country where we have lots of other problems. But I think the fact that they have been able to set aside such a large amount of money uh, uh, underscores the importance that they attach to deep tech independence for the country, for the nation.
And it's been a pity because, for long we've seen our researchers, because talent is not a problem here. Even the latest economic survey says that, we have some of the brightest minds.
Oh, absolutely.
India's in, I think, top 3 now in scholarly publications, some of the highest number of patents being, put in, and so many other things which are happening. But a lot of the path breaking discoveries or treatments or innovations are happening overseas.
Yes.
Maybe by our own people, done
Yes.
by our own talent.
Yes.
So that has been quite a sore point.
Yeah, it is. It's also been driven by. Okay, so the first of all, this conversion of academic research to innovative output that can benefit society is not a problem that India is facing uniquely. This is a problem at the NIH. This is a problem at Purdue. I mean, a lot of universities that we deal with, they have the same problem. There is a lot of. The only difference is they have such a large output that some of it gets through, right? And we have relatively smaller output. One of the reasons is that Indian The whole reward ecosystem of scientists
Right.
is geared towards publications. And when you do that, and more importantly, overseas publications. So what happens is scientists have to naturally work for problems that are more relevant to the West and not to us, because then only you can get your publication.
Right.
So there is a so that is slowly getting solved. It'll take a little bit of time, but people are now slowly understanding that even uh, tackling India's problems also may be another way to get publications. But that was the whole ecosystem at that time. That's just how the publishing world is. It's a whole other thing, nothing to do with India. But that's a recognized problem among academic scientists as one of the main reasons why translation is scarce.
Right.
Because it's a publication driven impact. The metrics that we're using are different from what the metrics that we need.
Right.
It will change, but it will take a little bit of time. We have talent, uh, but it needs to be reoriented towards eventual impact. We're not saying don't do basic science, because basic science is extremely important. If you don't have basic science, what are you going to translate?
Right.
Right. So you do need basic science, but it has to be towards a goal which is different from getting my work published.
Right.
And that is a mindset change that's going to take time. There's
Right.
no waste about it.
But the forecast is very optimistic. As per our estimates, India's bioeconomy is set to reach $300 billion in the next 5 years,
Yes.
and that's massive.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
which sectors do you think
So,
this is going to
so,
be?
so one of the things that India has done amazingly well is in the generics sector, where the pharmaceutical industry has done an incredible job setting that entire thing up,
Right.
including the manufacturing of vaccines and so on and so forth. And that has led to some truly remarkable effects around the world. A lot of reasons why, mm, I don't remember the exact number, but more than 50% of the drugs that are consumed by uh, patients in the US come from the US pharma, from Indian pharma. Um, so I think, and now with biosimilars and all of that, is getting one level up the value chain, and that's the 300 billion that you see.
Right.
What you don't see is the next Pfizer or the next Lilly. And that, for example, just to give you a sense, you're talking about a $300 billion bioeconomy. Lilly's market cap is currently $1 trillion. One company, right? So that is not what we have seen so far.
Will we see? Do you see that coming
We,
up?
I'm not sure about the market, but because they are valued differently, but we have to see it over the next 2 decades. Or maybe a little bit more, but we have to see movement towards that.
Right.
That's all, because Lilly is now a very very old company, so you can't really compare. It's not apples to apples, but at a minimum, you would want to see, I don't know, 5 blockbuster drugs coming out of India for the world,
For the world, yes.
right, over the next 10 to 15 years, like what's happening in China.
Right.
So, yeah.
And somehow in the middle of all of this, and you've been in the trenches because y'all are developing
Sure.
something path breaking as well. How does regulation fit into it? Has it been a challenge? Is it getting better?
I think it is getting better, because so what I can tell you is that whenever we have interacted with the regulators, we have seen people who are highly skilled and highly sincere in what they're trying to do. Uh, every regulator has a different mindset depending on the ecosystem they're in. Right. So the Indian regulator, rightly so, is focusing a lot on manufacturing standards, because we have some incidences that have happened on manufacturing standards where the cough syrup contamination and this, that, and the other. So they have to focus on that. There's no option left, right? If you go into US, they don't focus as much on manufacturing standards initially, but they focus on it by the time you are getting to the final stage. So different people have different ways to. Different regulators have different mindsets in the way they regulate. Um, what we have seen is, since especially therapies like ours are a first in class, so there is a lot of it takes time, so that we have to bake it into our system, right? Because it is just what it is. It takes 6 months to get an approval. Um, so, but and we have seen uh, an effort to connect with us, an effort to truly understand what our product is, and an effort to understand the risks of the product, which is what a regulator's job is.
Right.
So I think it it is also a function of the kind of innovation a regulator sees, right? The FDA will see 100 items.
Yeah.
So they will have the necessary expertise because they have seen it all.
Right.
In India, the regulator will not see 100 items,
Right.
or at least not so far.
Right.
So I think in 5 years' time, they may be at the level of the FDA,
Right.
depending on the applications that they see.
Right.
So
So somewhere even the regulator is leveling up, right?
they are
Over there.
leveling up. It will take time. I mean, it's like turning around a large ship, right? It takes time for it to steer, change course. We all run companies. We like to be critical of governments and etc. We all run companies which are, of a scale that is so small,
Yeah.
and we also find how hard it is to change the mindset, change the incentive structures, get people aligned to a common goal. So now we have this large monolith, which is the government of India,
Yeah.
with all its states going in different directions. And I don't envy the job of people in government, to be quite honest.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And let's talk about iStem now, and let's talk about
Sure.
you, because I think what you're building, several products, of which one which is at a very advanced stage and is very exciting. But before we come to that, a bit about you. You were in, you've had a great career in clinical research, pharma services. What made you start iStem? Firstly, as an entrepreneur, and what gap did you see that required?
So I think this was 2013 or something, and you reach a certain stage where more money doesn't necessarily translate into more happiness and so on and so forth, right? And I was trying to figure out what next to do, and I had gone to Rajni for some medical for my eyes, and we were just talking, and she's a retinal dystrophy specialist. So a lot of patients would come in. She would say, I can't do much about it, and thankfully she was and she knew that I came from the drug development, so we started talking. So every time I would go for my eyes, we would spend like 10 minutes on something else, which is what to do for this. And then I met Professor Rams, who was set up he was the dean of INSTEM, and he said, well, here is your problem that you guys are talking about. There can be a potential solution that can emerge in terms of cell therapy, gene therapy, so on. So I studied it probably over a year, met several people in the US and so on. And we found that one of the biggest problems that is going to come is when these therapies will be launched, which is a decade after, the price points at which they will be launched will be completely unaffordable.
Right.
So Luxturna, now that has been approved by the FDA, costs $495,000 per injection. There is a sickle cell anemia uh, gene therapy that the company stopped selling because it costs $2.6 million per injection. Now, there is not just for India but for the world, we have to create something that is much more scalable. So that's how the whole thought process started building up. And that's how the shape of iStem started.
Okay.
It happened over 2 years, multiple conversations with multiple people. And I would say even after we started iStem, for another 1 or 2 years, we were still not absolutely 100% sure of exactly what we were doing. And it slowly started building up. Yeah.
And eyesight RP, which is again, it's at a very interesting, exciting stage. Making iStem probably one of three companies globally in the world where your treatment will potentially cure blindness caused by dry EMD.
That's correct.
And from what we understand is that the results that iStem is getting are far more positive than even the others. So tell us a bit about that, and what will it do, for India and the world?
As I said, uh, so a little bit about the disease,
Yeah.
which is dry AMD, also known as geographic atrophy, because these things are interchangeable for some reason. Geographic atrophy is the moderate to severe form of dry AMD, largest cause of incurable blindness for people above 60. 196 million people suffer from it worldwide. About 40 of those will be in India. There's no cure. You start losing central vision, and ultimately that blob keeps expanding to a point where you can't see. Um, we are one of three. There are two drugs approved in the US which aim to slow the acceleration of the disease, if that makes
Right.
sense. So it will say if you take that drug, you will still lose vision, but you'll lose vision slowly.
Right.
Right? We're one of three companies which are trying to reverse the vision loss that has already happened. Um, so we did our phase one,
Hmm.
and 8 out of 9 subjects we found had a reversal of vision loss. So they could
Wow.
start seeing things that somebody said I could now see, you know, very specific things I could see. I had not seen my grandchild for a long time. I could see that again. Somebody said I can now see the switch of the borewell, so that I don't need to ask somebody else to switch off the
Wow.
borewell because I'm always tense that the water will flow. Some very, very specific qualitative things that came in. So 8 out of 9 had that effect. We're right now in phase two. We are started recruiting that, and we're hopeful. As of now, we have our efficacy, which is above the other two, which is Roche and Astellas. Uh, phase two, we will see how it comes. I mean, there is a research element of this.
Right.
Um, but we have reason to be optimistic at this
Yeah.
stage.
And what is the timeline for say the treatment to actually be in the market?
So a lot of it depends on the regulator and the results that come in on phase two. If the results come in, if the results are similar to phase one,
Right.
uh, we would expect to finish up the trial by end of the year and submit to the regulator by early next year
Okay.
for a potential commercial approval for
Wow.
India. If that happens, for dry AMD, the only therapy to reverse vision loss in the world will be available in India and
Wow.
nowhere else.
Wow.
So that's what we're hoping for.
And at a fraction of the
Oh yeah,
cost.
of course.
So tell us
Majority
a
of the
bit
cost.
about how you're democratizing that, because it's access
Yes,
to vast populations, not just in
absolutely,
India, but overseas also,
absolutely.
who can afford it.
One of the biggest things that we started off with is, when we started iStem, we spent a lot of trying time to understand our purpose,
Hmm.
right? Why are we here? And we said, first thing is we will go after complex diseases. Why? Because it's very hard to use a small molecule to treat a complex disease. There's a lot of reasons beyond the scope of this show. The other thing is we'll go out for incurable diseases because we're not interested in just making a buck for. And the third thing we said is we will go after diseases with large patient populations because
Hmm.
then only we can provide scalable solutions. We can grow these cells at scale. Once you grow these cells at scale, we can reduce the costs.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing from day one. Our protocol has been designed in a way in which you can grow these cells in massive numbers.
Right.
Um, so 300, 400 million cells in a single batch, and even more if we need to. And so that will has the potential to bring the cost down. We had always said that if somebody is selling at $500,000,
Hmm.
even if we do 80% off, it
Hmm.
still is not enough.
Hmm.
Even if we are 20% of the competition, it has no relevance. So my wish is a therapy for less than $15,000. We would hope that we will be able to get it even lesser than that, but I
Okay.
can't comment on it until we get to a point where that
Point.
is. But that's where we're driving towards.
Right.
Just to give you a sense, CAR T, for example, is okay. I'll turn it into rupees for better. So CAR T, you would the one that is developed by Indian companies and is available here is
Hmm.
available at about 40 to 50 lakh rupees, which
Wow.
is still, I think they're also trying to do the same thing, trying to reduce the costs.
Right.
We would want to do it under a 10 lakh rupee
Wow.
range. And so that's what we're aiming towards. Let's see
Wow.
where we get to
Wow,
finally.
amazing, amazing. And of course, eyesight RP is one of the products that you all are developing. Would you tell us a bit about which other uh,
Sure.
diseases that you're
So
looking
there are
at?
three other diseases that we are looking for. One is a disease known as retinitis pigmentosa, which is a disease which happens in younger populations.
Right.
For that, we are expecting animal studies to start sometime next year.
Okay.
We have the protocol and et cetera, that going through right now. The second is a disease known as pulmonary fibrosis, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, where you where there is a lot of collagen deposition and all of that, and breathing becomes a problem. Ultimately, it's fatal, and
Yep.
again, no cure. So following the same complex incurable diseases with large patient populations. For that, we're starting studies next month with our collaborators in Singapore. Um, so that's going on. And the third is Parkinson's, for which we're right now in the process of figuring out what kind of cell that we have. So the point is, once we get to commercial, every 2 to 3 years, we would debut a therapy for another incurable disease,
Wow.
and that's the hope, and that's the plan. So let's see where it goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these diseases that you've mentioned, I think massive populations are suffering, and they're like Parkinson's, for example. There really is nothing that one can do. And if you have something which could potentially reverse it, would it reverse it or decelerate it?
No, we're after reversing diseases. We're not after
Wow.
decelerations, because that's
Amazing.
not something that we're after. So whatever we do, unless we figure out how to decelerate, reverse,
Yeah.
there are others who are in the business of deceleration, right?
Right.
So that's a different segment. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able
Amazing.
to make an impact. Yeah.
But that's really amazing. And I've been to your offices and labs, and it's a really nice space, but it's very lean team.
Yeah.
It's like you have a superbly efficient way of functioning. How does that work?
I would argue that for a company that is racing towards a goal as audacious as this, you need a lean team,
Mm,
because you don't need a large team, because alignment towards the goal is going to be incredibly important.
right.
So we've got everybody, all of them are self driven. Nobody checks in and checks out on when somebody's coming and when somebody's going, because that's not necessary.
Mm,
Um, right. So we have, it's, I think now we are 17 people and growing, but we will never be like 100 and more in
right.
the foreseeable future, because our point is innovation.
Mm,
So for that, quality matters significantly more than quantity. So yeah, I think I would say the reason why we've been able to do what we've been able to do is because of our lean team.
right. Right. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come to the next and the last segment,
Sure.
which is a very quick
Hmm.
response. I don't think too much.
Hmm.
One myth about India's biotech ecosystem.
That it lacks originality.
Okay, I'm still going to ask you to
Sure. Oh yeah,
expand on
sure.
it.
No, there are several things. If you come to C Camp, if you go to a lot of incubation centers and all of that,
Mm,
people are trying really really amazing things.
right.
Right? I mean, we know startups which are trying to figure out how to create high protein food for shrimp, which can also decrease the antibiotic usage in shrimp. We know
Wow.
startups who are trying to store data on a DNA. We know startups who are trying to do seaweed farming in Indonesia to decrease and to leverage it to create energy. I mean, there's the amount of stuff. We just have to look.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think there's a lot to be, and that's just in C camp. I'm not
Right.
even sure about outside.
Wow.
So yeah,
No, I always say this that being a former journalist, I always tell my friends who are now journalists that look beyond quick commerce and gig economy. And when you look at startups in deep tech, and look at startups in biotech, the ones who are creating true innovation.
absolutely.
Maybe you don't find it interesting because you're not understanding it, you're not seeing it at scale right
Yes,
now, but there
yes,
is an amazing story happening. So I'm
absolutely.
so glad you highlighted that on our podcast. One structural reform that you would like to implement if you were in government, say, which I know we don't want those roles, but
Uh, I think they're getting to it, but but of approval timeline which is more predictable
right.
would be helpful. Mm, and I'll tell you why. For iStem, it was okay, because thankfully we've got investors who are patient. But
Mm,
if you talk about a 6 to 9 month timeline for a regulatory approval, if you're a startup, you raise money for 18 months.
mm,
And if 6 to 9 months you have to wait out of those 18, you've spent a massive amount of OPEX just waiting.
yeah.
And that's very inefficient. So creating certainty around that would be very helpful.
Is there certainty in the US
Yes,
or
it's a
or
30
in
day.
China?
It's 30-day timelines.
Hmm.
Every day it's 30 days. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's definitely
Yeah. It's either
something to
that or
work
they
on.
put you on clinical hold. So
Right.
the thing is, they, getting put on a clinical hold in the US is something that no company wants to do. So you put your best foot forward and so on. So it
Right.
compresses and intensifies. So the intensity rises
Right.
during those 30 days. But once it's done, it's done.
Right. Right.
So,
Which country can we learn from and why? Since we are
oh,
in this very exciting stage.
I think what China, I mean, US is not something we can learn from because the US deploys resources, financial resources at a scale that we just don't have. The nearest country that we can learn from is absolutely China. Because what China has done over the last 10 years in biotech is absolutely remarkable. They have invested across the ecosystem. They have created a venture fund of funds where the government invests through the venture fund. Uh, they're- they have created a system where it's very tough. So if you if you're not good, they are going to drop you right away. Right. But if you are not, then I mean, China has gone through having like 20 CAR Ts from in the last 5 years, which is more than what the US has.
Yeah.
So they've done an incredible job.
Wow.
In execution.
One area where you think we can leapfrog globally?
Um, I think I'm biased towards cell and gene therapy.
Yeah.
But I would say in cell and gene therapy, everybody is approximately at the same baseline, maybe 5 years here or there, which is not a lot of time for biotech. My working theory is that over the next 10 to 20 years, a lot of diseases that are currently incurable will start becoming curable.
Right.
Cancer, dry MD, fibrosis, Parkinson's, etc. If we can create a scalable platforms across all these companies,
Right.
we would be the only place in the world where incurable therapy diseases that get cured at a significant fraction of the cost of the West,
Right.
and at qualities which are at or better than the West.
Right.
And that is what we should aim towards.
Right. Because this is something that we've seen in other sectors that India has done,
Yeah.
where we've, space, for example, I know unrelated,
Absolutely.
but we've done so well with, again, fraction
Absolutely.
of cost.
Yeah.
So,
It's not just
yeah.
finance, it's the execution. I mean, there's a lot of
Execution,
other things
yeah.
that come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just able to create that global quality, but
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
lesser cost.
Yeah.
One last question. An upcoming biotech innovation that excites you the most? It may be India, it may be overseas. Something that excites you the most.
I think the combination of AI and biology is something that is exciting me, but I'm not sure where it is headed.
Isn't it worrying you?
No, AI in biology is incredibly exciting because it has the potential to unlock new enzymes. It has the potential to unlock new proteins. Enzymes are also protein. Same thing, but things that are bottlenecked for the last 5,000 years, you can de-bottleneck. Now that's the theory. How it's going to happen in practice, I'm still not sure how it's going to unveil.
Will you all work with that and
We
see, or
started sort of dipping our toes in these kind of things.
okay.
Yeah.
What about the dangers of it though? I mean, AI and biologics, I mean,
Yeah,
what
there's
can be
always a danger
created?
you could potentially create a virus which is
Yeah.
100 times more infected than the SARS virus. All these things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, governments will have to figure out how to create guardrails.
Hmm.
Uh,
And I think companies also need to understand.
we're entering into a very uncertain world in terms of AI.
Yeah.
It's just a reality.
Yeah. I mean, it's truly exciting. I mean, obviously, as you said, if something's been.
I'm not sure it is exciting. The I don't buy into it will solve everything.
Right.
Uh, I think this whole hype that it is going to solve everything is also a function of the next valuation that the AI companies need to attain.
True.
Quite
True.
honestly, and the capex that they have generated and how to get a return on their investments and all that.
True.
So that is a function of that. But for India,
Hmm.
smartly using AI can completely transform our sectors where, for example, the amount of doctors, I mean, in rural areas. So now, if you can use AI to reach the villages for healthcare, for education, where where we have lack of trained resources,
Hmm.
that can truly transform us as a nation. So I
Absolutely.
would just say let's focus on the positives and figure out how to
Yeah.
utilize for us. There's a lot of negatives that are going to come out. It is just what it is.
And just keep our guardrails up
Keep it
and
address
be
up.
attentive both from
Be
the
attentive.
administration and the companies who are
Absolutely.
involved as
Make sure
well.
the data is sitting in here.
Yeah.
Understand that if somebody has, all the other stuff,
Yeah.
be wary of,
Yeah.
you know, sort of the no permanent friends
Yeah.
kind of
Correct,
scenario.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So both from the data protection
Yeah.
point of view
Absolutely.
and as well as what super intelligence
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do, but this is a reality. It is happening,
Absolutely.
and if we have the right checks and balances,
Yeah.
we
And
can
yeah,
possibly,
and create in enterprises which are situated in India,
yeah,
which have the capability, because that's the best way to get control.
right, right,
So, yeah,
yeah.
that's what we
Well, it's an exciting, cautiously exciting
cautiously
world,
exciting would be the right
right?
word. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on What India Needs, Dr. Desai. We are so excited with what iSTEM has to offer in the next few months.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on What India Needs podcast. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Do leave your comments below and tell us who you would like to see next. Thank you and see you next time.